are going to start today in Delaware with Horizon Services. This goes back to 2011, so it's an old story. I was hired by this company to help them with their marketing, 2011. They were about a $44 million company, met with the owner, Mark Aiken, and he said, I want you to help me with all my marketing. We looked at their direct mail, we looked at their newspaper ads they were doing at the time, pay-per-click, all the things that you would normally expect an HVAC company to be doing for marketing. And I looked down there and I said, how come you're not doing any radio or TV? No radio, no TV. $44 million company. They spent 10% across the board every year on marketing, $4.4 million budget, no TV, no radio. And the owner you got to know Mark Aiken, very intense individual. He says, if we can't track it, we don't do it. He said, I hate radio and I hate television because we cannot track it. We spend the money, the ads go out, we don't really know if it's working. And I said, Mark, look, you're a $44 million company. You need more exposure. You're going now into Philadelphia. You're trying to get heavy into that market. You've got to get on radio and television. He said, fine, I'll give you $1 million. Not me personally, budget. At first I thought he meant me. I was very happy. So he gave me $1 million. I put it on radio the first year, 2012, $1 million in radio. It worked pretty well, it seemed. The next year he gave me $2 million more to put on TV. We went heavy into Philadelphia. Wilmington didn't have its own TV market, it was the Philadelphia. So we spent $3 million. And here's what ended up happening over the next few years. Got the budget up to $4 million in radio and TV. They went to $150 million of sales and they sold the company. I got fired. That's what happens when they sell the company. Private equity comes in and says, hey, who's this guy? How much does he make? We probably don't need him anymore. So I got the boot, but they got the paycheck. It worked really, really well. Now it's 2025, obviously. Now, when it comes to television, you can track it. I want to make sure you understand the story. We were able to grow that business from 44 to 150 million. They did a lot of things well, obviously. But from a marketing standpoint, without really being able to track it, you say, well, what do you mean you can't track it? When we tracked their TV and radio against a phone number that we put 1-800-999-1995, that was the phone number on those ads. The average cost per lead was $800. But their web traffic tripled, their web inquiries tripled, everything was going online, okay? Does that make sense? But now we can absolutely track this. You can track it, you can laser target it, you can measure it, you can optimize it. So that's what we're gonna talk about today, how to take television and make it a very laser pointed tool. We got the laser pointer here. Okay, so now is the time to get on the OTT bandwagon. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. So by way of show of hands, which I can't really see because the lights are very bright, who is already doing OTT as a part of your marketing plan? Raise your hands nice and high so we can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would say roughly 10 to 20%, which means that there's 80% of you that probably need to get on this bandwagon. My job today is to convince you that that's going to be a smart thing for you to do. All right, so here's what we're going to cover today very briefly. We're going to cover why we've historically only used linear television, why the landscape is shifting to OTT now, what makes OTT superior, the big fat hairy problem with OTT. Yeah, it's a big fat hairy problem. We're going to overcome it, and then how we've solved that problem, how to get started on OTT, okay? So let me tell you who I am before we get too far into this. My name is Rich Harshaw. I'm the founder and CEO of Level 10 Contractor. I wrote a book called Unlocking Unlimited Lead Flow. Talks about all different kinds of lead flow. It doesn't go into OTT because I wrote this book about 5 years ago. And as you're about to see, things have changed dramatically in the last 5 years as it relates to television. Started in 1994 as a general marketing consultant. I've been in this industry, remodeling, home improvement, home services, since about 2005. So I'm 20 years into this. Got a lot of experience working with some of the biggest and most successful companies in the industry. A lot of you in this room I've worked with, many still to come. Also have a podcast called Level 10 Contractor Daily Podcast. It is a daily podcast. It's been going for almost 6 years now. It has over 2,000 episodes. If there's anything you want to know about marketing that relates to contractors, you can go to this podcast, and I promise you it is on there multiple times, including the recording of this very thing I'm saying right now will be on the podcast next week. Also, I do a podcast with Qualified Remodeler of Top 500 and Fast Remodeler fame. I do a podcast with them twice per month. And mostly on that podcast, I'm interviewing people, a lot of you in this room, who are industry titans who have a lot of really great experience as it relates to marketing. So you can check those out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to listen. Here's what we do at Level 10 Contractor. We specialize in working with companies in the $5 to $20 million range. Companies that are trying to take the next step up. We're an elite level marketing agency. Here's what we do, just to give you an idea of who's talking to you right now. We're an agency that builds websites and does SEO services. We also do digital advertising services, Facebook, pay-per-click, things like that. And then we do a lot of TV and radio. We've got right now about $13 million of managed budget in TV and radio. That number will be important as we get into this story a little bit. Also heavily into streaming advertising. So that's what we do. Now, before we get into the meat of OTT, I want to give you some definitions of television, just so we're on the same page as we go through this presentation. First of all, there's what we call linear television. Linear television is a fancy word for TV. It's just regular TV. It's going to be things like your local channels from your network affiliates. It's also going to be basically anything that you can buy from the local stations. Then you got cable TV. I think everybody knows what cable TV is. It's where you buy the cable channels from the providers, things like HGTV, ESPN, Disney. I have historically been a not fan of cable television. It has a lot of problems. It tends to be expensive. It tends to be hard to get good coverage in a local area. It has a very, very niched use that is very rare, so we mostly don't have clients on cable TV. And then we've got streaming TV. You've also heard it called OTT. Like Pat said, it stands for over the top. That's a weird word. I don't really know why they want to call it over the top. It's really just streaming television. You also hear the word CTV, which stands for connected TV, which is literally exactly the same thing as OTT. Why does it have two sets of initials? I don't know. It just does. Now you know that when you hear those things, it's the exact same thing. In case you didn't know, now you do know. Okay? Comes through the internet, streamed on things like smart TVs, Fire Stick, Roku, also through apps. I think everybody's aware of how that works. So these are our definitions as we get into this. So I want to tell you why we used linear TV traditionally. Because a lot of people look at linear TV, we still have about $10 million a year on linear TV in 2025 for my clients combined. Now it's rapidly shifting over into streaming, but a lot of people are like, well, why would you even still be on regular TV? And the answer is, first and foremost, it's inexpensive. It's about $4 to $12 CPM. Now, this is an important term that you need to understand. CPM, cost per thousand. This is another one of those weird letter things. M is the Roman letter for thousand. CPT, cost per thousand, seems more like English, but whatever. Cost per thousand, 4 to 12. That means it costs you between $4 and $12 to reach 1,000 impressions on regular TV. Average is going to be about 6 or 7 or 8, somewhere in that range. We typically put our clients on news programming. Why? Because people tend to not DVR the news. The DVR is the enemy of television advertising. If people are DVRing and they're fast forwarding, has anybody ever had a situation where you're like on vacation, you're at a hotel or something like that, and you're watching a program on television and the commercials come on and you feel like you want to die? You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe people actually watch these stupid things. And I'm saying that as a person who makes a living running ads on TV. News tends to not get DVR'd because it's current. And if you miss the news, you just watch the next news program. You don't usually DVR it. Also, news gives us a consistent viewership. People tend to have a favorite channel, a favorite newscast, a favorite time of day. And in advertising, the key to success in any advertising is always going to be consistency and frequency. Making sure that you're hitting people again and again and again and again and again and again and again so the message gets through their thick head. This is why when the sales reps come to me and they say, hey, we've got this opportunity to put you on the Kansas City Chiefs game. It's normally a $13,000 spot, but we can sell it to you for $8,000. I always invariably say, no, not interested. Here's why. I don't want to hit 1 billion people one time. I want to hit a smaller number of people consistently over time, okay? Frequency is the name of the game when it comes to television, and truth be told, all advertising, okay? So consistency of viewership happens on linear TV, on news programming. Also, the audience tends to be older. And a lot of people look at that and say, oh, geez, that's kind of a problem. But also, guess what? Older people have homes, older people have money, they need roofs, they need windows, they need sidings, they need bathrooms. So it's a pretty good match. It's not like we're over here selling, skateboards and the news on linear TV is a bad fit for what we're doing. It tends to be a good fit. Also, linear TV, I like it because we can go in and we can negotiate the stations against each other. We can say, hey, ABC, we're getting a $4 CPM over at NBC, so if you don't give us a $3.50, we're gonna just stay there. And they're like, okay, here's money. So negotiation is a real advantage in this market. Now, here's the downsides to linear TV. First of all, not all the viewers are homeowners. Here's what that means. If you're showing your commercial to 10,000 people and 3,000 of those people do not own the home that they're currently sitting in, you just wasted 30% of your money. What are you going to do about that? And the answer is, well, it's inexpensive, so that kind of works into the equation. Also, not all homeowners who do own their home, homeowners, are qualified. They're broke. They don't have money. They're not going to spend money. So how do we deal with that? I don't know. Also, you can't pinpoint geography. I have a client, big HVAC client in Orange County, California. And for years, we never advertised on TV. Why? Because they serviced Orange County. Guess what the TV market was? Los Angeles and Orange County all in one. So if we wanted to go on TV, we would have to spend $900,000 a year to go on ABC, the biggest station in that market, and we would be reaching 70% of the geographic area that they didn't even have trucks that went there. So that's a problem. So you have some geography issues in some cases. Now, if you service the whole city and the TV signal goes to the whole city, that's not a problem, but that's not always the case. Okay, also a downside, ads are subject to skipping because people are gonna use their DVR like we talked about. Also, here's an interesting one. It relies on a consistency of viewing to get a good frequency, which means that you have to count on the person watching that news program and then the next day watching that news program again, and then the next week watching that news program again because the ad is running on the same news program 3 or 4 days a week. So you've got to count on them watching to be able to get that frequency. And you think, well, of course you have to count on people watching. But here's what you're going to see when we get to OTT in just a minute. We can actually follow them around the dial. We don't care what they're watching. They can watch anything they want and we'll still hit them with the ads. So that's going to be an advantage in just a minute. Okay, also the audience is shrinking. I don't think this is news to anybody. Cord cutting is a real thing. Here's some stats for you. 2015, this is when streaming was just getting a foothold. Well, here's the stats. Pay TV, this is cable, 85 million households. Non-pay was 20 million. So out of all of the households watching TV, it was about an 80-20 split. Then in 2020, you can see what happened. 68 versus 38, and then 2025, what do you think the trend is? Obviously, pay TV is still shrinking. Non-pay TV is getting bigger. People are talking about how now you've got all the streaming services. Somebody's going to bundle them back together and sell it to you as cable. I don't really know. But here's what we do know. Linear TV is shrinking. Now, some people will look at that and say, well, that's a good reason not to do linear TV. But the answer really is linear TV can still work for you because it's so inexpensive. And if the audience is half as big as it used to be, per the numbers, it doesn't really matter because why? Because you're buying it on a CPM basis, so you're only paying for the people who are actually watching it. So if there used to be 20,000 people watching the 7 o'clock news, and now there's only 10,000 people watching the 7 o'clock news, well, you're only paying for the 10,000, so who cares? Well, I want to reach more people. Well, then just buy more stations. Or just go to Facebook. Guess what percentage of adults are on Facebook daily? 70%. Okay, so cord cutting is a problem. Here's what I'm trying to say right now. There's problems with linear TV. It still works for a lot of companies. I'm not saying it's terrible, but then we've got the new thing, which is OTT, and that's what we're here to talk about. Streaming. Streaming, you can reach all of these different networks. You can reach anything on it, anybody on anything. It's basically unlimited, and I think you already know that. Here's the advantages of OTT. First of all is demographic targeting. This is really, really important. So, number one, you can reach only homeowners. You can reach only homeowners. So the 30% or 40% or whatever the percent is in your market that isn't actually a homeowner, they'll never see your ad. You'll selectively reach the people you want. So not just homeowners, but you can actually hit people based on the age of their home. If it's a new home, we don't want to reach them. They don't need a new bathroom. They just moved in. It's a brand new home. But if it's 10 years old or 15 years old, maybe you want 20 years or older, we can define that. We can also define a home value. Let me ask you this. In your market, what is the value of homes that you're typically servicing? We can define and hit just people that own homes in that range. I've got a client right now that's hitting homes between $280,000 and $450,000. They said to me, homes bigger than that are more expensive than that, we don't usually do well in those because that's not our market. Homes that are less than that, we don't do well in that. So we're gonna just stick to this range. So now, just based on these three things, we've narrowed to just the people that can actually buy from you that you want to hit. Now, you can also do this by income and gender and interest. We don't typically actually go this route because if you go income route, you tend to lose some of the older people who don't have a big income, but they have a home value and they have a net worth because they're older. They're not necessarily working as much as they used to. So we typically go based on home value, but you can do it based on income. You can do it based on gender. You can run ads. For instance, I've got a client that sells water softeners, and they want to create a campaign that goes directly to mothers of young children and talking about water safety issues. So we can actually focus in not just on women, and not just women of a certain age, but also we can specifically go target women of children that are infants or toddlers or 5 years or younger or 5 to 10, whatever we want. All of these data sets are available to pinpoint target, and this is massive, okay? All right, now, this is just a very quick visual of some of the data sources. You might think, well, how do we know who we're reaching? And the answer is we're sending impressions to IP addresses. Does everybody know what an IP address is in 2025, hopefully? We're sending impressions to IP addresses, and the IP addresses are overlaying on all of data from all of these different companies that provide these sources, so we know exactly who is at that IP address. Now, this is actually much more accurate than Facebook. And you think, well, how's that possible? Because Facebook is, you know, they know everything about you. You ever had that thing where you thought about something and then there's an ad on your phone for it? And you're like, whoa, I never even said that to anybody. This is creepy. It is creepy. The problem with Facebook is this right here. Everybody's on their phone. And where your phone is at any given moment and what your IP address is based on where you bought your phone compared to where you currently reside or where you're at can be different. But your TV sits in your freaking house and doesn't move. So the targeting is very, very accurate on this. We found it to be much more accurate than Facebook. Facebook has some issues there. It's good, but it still has some issues, okay? Now, geographic targeting. This is the next thing that's massive, okay? Zip code level targeting. You can show your ads exactly where you want them to be seen. So this is a client of mine that's in Kansas City, and I'm going to show you where they're advertising with OTT. In the areas that are blue. The darker the blue, the more impressions are hitting during that month. Now, I want you to notice, these are scattered. Does this look probably pretty consistent with your town in terms of where the people you want to reach are relative to the middle of town? It's like, oh, all of the people we want to reach are on the east side or on the north side. No, they're not. They're scattered all the way around. Notice how many are right there in the middle of Kansas City. None. Why? Tends to be more lower income folks. They want to reach the higher income people. So we can hit the exact people. So I'll give you a visual on this. This is from the reporting. So this is how many impressions they've had so far this month. I pulled this report yesterday, and I think it says 650,000 impressions. I can't see it from here because it's too small. But then we can go out to the county and then the cities and then zip codes. And we can see exactly where our ads are hitting. And guess what? This is exactly where we told the system we want our ads to hit. So we have a huge level of precision in both demographic and geographic targeting, which allows our money to be more efficiently spent. Now, another advantage to OTT is you can build frequency. Like I said earlier, the key to results in advertising is frequency and consistency. And as I also mentioned earlier, you can follow viewers around the dial, which is kind of an old school term because there's actually not a dial anymore. Does anybody remember changing the dial Did anybody, when you were a kid, did the dial fall off and you had to change it with pliers? Okay, that does not exist anymore. But following them around the dial means this. If somebody's watching Discovery Channel and I hit them with an impression because they're in the right zip code and they're in the right demographic and they're a homeowner with a home value that's in the area that I want to hit, I can hit them with this impression, and then later that day they change the channel and now they're watching Major League Baseball. I can hit them with an impression. Same person, same TV, same IP address, different channels, different what we call in OTT publishers, and boom, I'm getting this frequency that I want. So I'm following the qualified people around the dial, so to speak. Now what we typically do is we target the frequency of 10 times per month. Okay, now if I want to hit somebody 10 times per month on linear TV, depending on the station and depending on what the metrics look like, I might have to run 150 to 200 spots to hit the average person that's watching 10 times. In OTT, I hit somebody 10 times, that's 10 impressions because they see it. Also, guess what? Ads, not skippable. They have to watch them. DVRs are irrelevant in this scenario. So this gives you just a quick visual of what it looks like to build a frequency. You can see that over the course of this particular client, a certain number saw it only 1 time, 2 times, as you go down 3, 4, 5, and that works out in this particular case to about 11 actually for the month. All right, now here's the big one, attribution. Remember I talked about Mark Aiken didn't want to do it because he can't track it? Well, we can track OTT. Here's how it works. We put a pixel on your website, it records visitors from your ads, and then when they go to your website, it records it as a web visit. So they see your ad on TV, then later they go to your website. It could be the next day, it could be the next month, doesn't matter. We record that and we say people went to your website. So we know if it's pushing people to your website and to what extent it is pushing people to your website. We can also put a pixel on your form fills so we can know to what extent they're filling out forms and becoming leads. That's pretty cool. We can also optimize. So if we have this information that we're tracking, we can now optimize your campaign over time, and we can lean into the things that are working and lean away from the things that are not working. For instance, the creative, the ads. We can run 3 different ads at the same time, and based on the pixel tracking of each of those ads, we can see this one produced at a high level, this ad produced at a medium level, this ad produced at a low level. And then we boot the low level and we lean into the heavier ones. And then maybe we test a 3rd one. And over time, we can really start to dial in on what's actually working. If you're running linear TV and you're running 3 different ads, how do you know which ad works the best? Answer? You also run OTT and you see which one's working the best, and then you take that information, you go optimize your linear campaign. But if you're only running a linear campaign, here's what you know, nothing. You can't know. You have to just guess. All right, we can also optimize day of the week, time of day. We can see when ads are working better. We can see that on Sundays, in one client's case, they're getting very low results compared to the other 6 days of the week. So we can just boot Sunday and not run on Sunday. Caution. Caution. Do not make snap judgments based on short periods of time and low quantities of data. You want to make your decisions based on at least 1 to 2 months track record. We've seen fluctuations because it's called life. Things fluctuate. But it is good information. Here's a good one. Publishers. We can see which publisher. Now, think of a publisher like a channel. It's not exactly a channel. Publisher could be Discovery Network, which has multiple channels, but we can see which ones are getting the best results. If a publisher is getting a good result, we lean into it. We spend more dollars. If it's getting poor results, we boot it. We typically run about 600 different publishers, and then we can start to narrow them down from there. Okay, we can also optimize zip codes. If you've got a certain zip code that's working well, we can lean into it. If you've got certain zip codes that are not performing well, we can say, let's try a different zip code. The ability to optimize is, I'm not gonna say it's unlimited, but it's robust. In fact, it's so robust that you have to be a little bit careful with it because it's very tempting to go in and start switching a bunch of dials, and now you're testing 4 different things that you can't really tell which one's making the most difference. So you gotta be a little bit careful with optimization. However, main point, you can optimize. Okay, and then also the demographics. We can run two different campaigns. We can run one campaign for homes that are 250 to 350, and then one from 350 to 450. Adjust those numbers for your market as necessary. If you're in California, we literally did this. Anaheim, California was getting terrible results. We literally looked at the demographic data. We saw that the home values were lower. So we said, okay, only 900,000 and above in Anaheim. And instantly, we got better results. Instantly. We cut out all homes under 900,000, which is a lot if you're in Kansas City. But in Anaheim, apparently not. Okay? So, the big fat hairy problem. OTT is expensive. I'm going to tell you this story. You need to understand this. You're about to get into the most important part of this that you probably don't understand right now. Everything I've talked about so far, you probably have heard some version of this story. Here's the part you don't know. Okay, here's how OTT works. There's a thing called a DSP, demand side platform, DSP. You'll hear this in OTT land. Here's what that is. It's an online real-time bidding service for inventory. It takes a tremendous amount of tech infrastructure and commitment to build a DSP. This is not something that 14-year-olds are building in their bedroom. It's the real deal. In fact, there's only about, I think it's actually about 60 or 70 DSPs in the United States. Why? Because the barrier to entry is a high level of technical competence and a lot of money to be able to run a DSP, okay? Now, if you're gonna buy OTT, you're going to buy it either from a DSP or from a reseller of a DSP. Mostly resellers. Now, here's the thing that you probably don't know. Guess who the 800-pound gorilla is in the DSP world? Anybody wanna guess? Amazon. Now, here's the funny thing about Amazon. I learned this last year. Average CPMs are $45 to $55. Amazon is reselling to most of the major players. Now, has anybody had this experience before? You're buying TV or radio from the local station, and they come to you to sell you their local station, and they go, oh, hey, by the way, you should also buy OTT. And you're like, what? Well, I thought I was buying Channel 4. They're like, yeah, Channel 4. But also OTT. I've had newspapers and billboard companies try to sell me OTT. Like, that's weird. And like, they don't even want to sell the newspaper. They're like, sure, just buy the OTT. I'm like, but you're a newspaper company. Yeah, but buy the OTT. They're reselling for one of these DSPs. Here's what I found out. All of the major radio networks, Odyssey, iHeartMedia, Cumulus, you know these names? These are the biggest names of networks in radio. 4 or 5 years ago, they were approached by Amazon. Amazon had a big problem with their DSP, which is Amazon had no sales force. So they went to these companies that had media sales forces and they said, hey, why don't you sell this for us? And they said, great, we would love to have a product to sell. We see where things are going. And so they're selling Amazon's DSP at a markup. DSPs pay their salespeople high commissions. Did you know that the commissions on OTT are double? That's why when the newspaper or the radio or the sales rep shows up at your door and they say, I want to sell you Channel 4, also I want to sell you OTT, the reason they push OTT so hard is they're making double the commissions. It's just plain incentives. It's very easy to understand, okay? They give you little or no help with strategy. Now, here's how you buy it for less. Last year, I investigated this because my clients were starting to push in this direction. And I felt like if we could get the pricing down from $45 to $50 CPM versus $6 or $7 CPM, that's a hard pill to swallow from a cost standpoint, even with all the advantages of OTT. So I thought, I'm gonna go and figure this thing out. So I did about a month and a half long study on this. Okay, here's what I found out. All of the non-Amazon DSPs have the exact same inventory as Amazon, except they don't have Amazon Prime. But you don't want to be on Amazon Prime anyway. Let me tell you why. Because Amazon charges $90 to $100 CPM for their Amazon Prime inventory. That's great, but it's very expensive for no particular reason, okay? So here's what I did. I went out and I studied these guys. I interviewed them. I'm literally talking to iHeartMedia, trying to sell me their OTT. And I asked them, isn't this just the Amazon network? And they say, yeah, you're literally 15% more expensive for literally the precise same thing than if I just went to Amazon. Why would I do that? And they say, we didn't really want you to know that. Well, guess what? I found out. So here's what I did. I went to these 10 DSPs, I found out who was good, who was not good, and I negotiated with them, and I made a $2 million commitment to them. I'm gonna give you $2 million, give me the best pricing. And I negotiated the best price. And now the prices are in the $20 to $27 CPM range. So this is better than 45 to 55. Go to Cumulus, go to Amazon, ask them how much their prices are. You'll find you can easily validate all of this yourself by making a couple phone calls. But for the exact same inventory, we can get $20 to $27. This is called finally in the range of where we can do business, okay? All right, so there's tier 1 inventory and tier 2 inventory based on different kinds of programming. Some's a little more expensive, some's a little less expensive. Now let's talk about the strategies you want to go through for OTT. You can do branding, which is what we've traditionally done with linear TV. Here's some of the benefits of that. Or you can do direct response. Make the phone ring right now, easy to test and optimize with OTT. So I'll give you an example. I'm actually going to go to the second commercial.
When I was a kid,
just give you an example of a branding commercial.
Lots of companies say they guarantee your satisfaction, but at Solid State Construction, we've upped the ante. It's our love it or light it promise. If you're not thrilled with our products or services, you don't pay your final invoice. You incinerate it, burn it, light it up. I'll even let you use my flamethrower. It's our love it or light it promise. Only at Solid State Construction. Go to solidstateconstruction.com for details and videos.
I'm going to pass that. Or you can do what we call a power punch, which is like it's for storm chasers or for direct response. Okay, so you can pinpoint the zip codes and you can actually have this set to go and just, because of the targeting, you can easily hit where you want to go. Okay, you can also run power punches for sales, offers, things like that. So this is the overview of how it works. If anybody wants to learn more about this, we can do what we call a strike plan session with you, where we'll look at your marketing budget, we'll look at your creative, we'll look at whatever you want, and we'll help you put together a plan for getting on OTT and can make that happen for you. That's what I got for you today. Thanks for your time, and Pat, I'm gonna turn it back over to you.